Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Good morning, Wait.
Wait.
This is gonna be rough. Anyways, welcome back, Coffiners. We're glad to have you another week. Welcome back to Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I want to start off by saying I am on the tail end of a sickness, so my brain is not functioning at full capacity, so I want to apologize for that.
Yeah, we actually had some fun little laughters before the podcast began, or before the episode began. And so we know how you're doing, Holly. You're suffering from the same thing I had, the same thing Lisa had. But you're on the tail end, so that's good. And apparently I think it's tomorrow will running be much like better. Wildfire through the family in Utah.
Yeah, it really is. It's spread so much, and everyone has it right now. But we found out that it is COVID. So we'll see how it goes. I think this is probably my fifth time having COVID, so whatever. My body is used to it.
Yeah, even if you've been boosted and reboosted and shot to the moon and back, Holly. You're still getting COVID.
It don't mean a thing.
It don't mean a thing. No.
Nothing but a chicken wing.
That's right. And so let's see. So do you want me to just go into my week?
Yeah.
Nothing major. Thanks.
Oh, great. Nothing happened?
No. No,
what
not
about today?
Today was good because we were able to spend some time with my son, his girlfriend, and we had dinner together, and it was nice. It was a nice evening.
And Scott cooked for you, right?
He did.
Wow, Scott. Impressive.
For those of you that don't know and haven't tried an Instapot, he just bought one. And so we had chicken and rice and broccoli and cauliflower.
Okay, how did the Instapots actually work, though? Do you put the chicken in raw?
Mm-hmm.
And what, it's cooked in 5 minutes? What is that?
It could be put in frozen, thawed, whatever you want. And he actually marinated it in the classic Italian seasoning dressing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was immersed in there. He turned it on. It does a warm-up period, and then it beeps and then has a 15-minute cook.
15 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, we had like 4 pretty big breasts of chicken in there. And I think they were frozen at the time, but man, they came out moist and oh my
Really?
God.
So the cook is good.
It was good.
Wow, that's really something.
And
How
relatively,
do they do that?
I have no idea. And relatively quick. I think it's through pressure cooking actually, because it does look like an old pressure. What did they call those? My mom used to have one, and pressure cooker. Looks like an old pressure cooker. Yeah.
Huh. Well, there you have it, people.
Yeah. So it was good. We were there about a couple hours, played a couple games. Nice dinner, nice dessert. Yep.
What games did you play?
We played Quicks and Bank.
Bank?
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
I didn't either until tonight. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. I like Quicks. I'm a huge fan of Quicks.
Yeah, Quicks is good. We like that.
Yeah.
As a fan.
As a fan band.
As a fan band.
But nothing else?
Nothing else. I don't have anything else, really.
Yeah, and truly, I was so boring this week because really, I was just sick basically the whole week.
Yeah, you were kind of locked into the house, and then Caden got it, so he was locked into the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Caden got it, and then he gave it to me.
Oh, he gave it to you? He's the one that started the sickness this round?
That's right. Yes. I know it usually happens the other way around, but today I did the dishes for the first time in 4 days.
Wow. Did you have a lot? Or have you guys been eating?
So many.
Okay.
We ran out of bowls. And we have like 20 bowls.
Oh, that's funny.
So house is feeling a little cleaner, I guess, but
Good. And you're
that's
feeling a
all I
little
got
better.
really. Yeah, feeling a little better. I
Mhm.
think after sleeping tonight and then taking it easy again tomorrow, I think
Mhm.
we're definitely on the mend. So we'll be all better.
Good.
But with that, since neither of us have anything super interesting going on, let's just jump into this week's story and let's be frank.
Thanks. So today I want to tell you about a couple that were together for close to 56 years. It may have
Oh,
been 60. I think I'm undervaluating the amount of time that they spent together. But the
yeah.
wife came in to actually make the arrangements for her husband. And as I often do, and I don't really expect much of a response, but in this case, I got a lot of response. So
Uh-huh.
I just happened to look at her and I said, "So tell me a little bit about your husband." So here we began. He apparently he um, had snow skied over most helicopter skied
What?
off of, yeah. Do you know what that is?
No, what is helicopter skiing?
So there's no lifts that take you up into the highest peaks of the mountains, and so you have to go up by helicopter, and
Do they
you
just
jump,
jump you out?
yeah, you jump out of the helicopter and you start skiing down to the summit.
Okay,
And
this is
so,
so random, but I remember growing up, we had a game on the Wii that was this snowboarding game.
okay,
And the hardest level was you had to jump out of a plane onto a mountain.
yeah, and that's exactly what he did. But
Oh my
he
gosh.
actually competed up until he was 23 years old
Wow.
in that type of, I think they call it extreme skiing.
Yeah, it must
And
be.
so he had done that from the age of 19 to 23. He had skydived 54 times.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
he wanted to go the 55th time, but his wife said no. And then
55th
let's
time
see.
what? When he was like 90 years old?
No, no, in his early 40s.
In his early
He-
40s and he died. I died. He dived 50 times by then?
yeah, yeah.
Holy cow, that's too
And
many.
so there was that. And then he also liked to hike all of the trails of the area in which he lived. So
Hmm.
she was identifying all the trails that he had actually participated in the hiking process, how many people he had met, how they become best friends and hiking buddies for years.
Yeah.
He had gone to. Are you familiar with the Bondwell? I think it's the Bondwell track here in Arizona.
No.
Are you familiar with it? So he would go out there often, and they actually offer to you and I, for instance, we could set in a race car and could race their track.
But that's only
And
because we're minor celebrities, right?
oh, yeah, well,
We do have
all right.
stickers now.
More coming, but here we go. So anyway, he did that, and then what was the last thing that she told me that I was just totally in awe of? And I thought, well, here I am. I think at the time I was 23, maybe 24, and I kept thinking to myself, what what would I be doing, or what could I do in my life that would actually expand it to the point where I would think that I had done everything that I wanted to do in my life. Here I
Right.
am, and at my age now, and I haven't even looked at a list that I, may have compiled years ago of what it is that I wanted to do.
Oh,
And
wow.
cliff diving. That was the other
Oh.
thing in
So he was
Acapulco.
very much into extreme sports.
Yeah, and he totally enjoyed it. He also did some para hang gliding. He
Wow.
built a. I've seen him out here, but it looks like a go kart with a canopy on top. So you get to a certain speed and you can lift off the air. Lift.
Oh, like a doom buggy almost.
Yeah, kind of like it's not like it's a little smaller than a rail, but then it has a propeller behind it you can kick
Whoa.
on and you can do
Take
air.
flight.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
anyway, he was very active in what it was he was doing. And I said, "Well, how did you two meet?" And she said that they had met in a restaurant. And then one day he just actually happened to look at her after dating for a while and said, "Hey, come with me on a bike ride." So they decided to go on this bike ride. And I guess she said it was kind of long for her because she wasn't used to riding a bike. And I guess she asked him a question. He looked behind him to answer the question and hit some rock on his bike. And so he fell over onto his back and onto his side. And she immediately stopped, of course, to see what help she could render. And he was screaming about his right thigh hurting really bad, really bad. And she looked at his pants, and he had actually, something had cut because he was bleeding through his pants.
Oh my gosh.
And so what's that?
I just said, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, she got really concerned, and she said, well, let me look at your leg. And he said, no, please don't look at my leg. I'll be fine. Please don't. And she said, well, here it is. You got some sort of a lump here. So she went into his pocket and pulled out a ring.
Oh my gosh. A ring box?
Yeah, a ring box. And so he had actually gone on the bike ride with her to actually propose to her at the summit where they were headed. But he crashed his. So and she said, I felt so bad. And here this older woman is sitting there looking at me. She goes, I took the ring, or the box, I opened it up, and I was so excited to see the ring. I could not believe that. And she looks at him, and he's writhing in pain. She said, he's writhing in pain on the ground. And I looked at him, and I said, is this for me? And he goes,
is this for me?
I guess. Yeah.
I guess.
Could you help me? And so she put it on, and she was kind of admiring it, in the sun.
Oh, my gosh.
And here he is. Could you help me, please?
Oh my God.
So she was actually her whole time of riding the bike was not so much the pain that he had inflicted upon himself by crashing, but the only thing that she could really remember back. But as I probed a little deeper, the thing that she would remember is that ring, and it was a beautiful ring, and she still had the ring. And because a lot of times couples will increase the ring or change the ring over the years, make it a little bigger, upgrade. Yeah. And so it was very, very beautiful. And so we had this conversation for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times. Then she started talking to me about her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and how the family had stayed close together, close-knit because of him, because he wanted to do all these activities with family. And the family, it was almost like a requirement to be there when he said, you know what, this summer we're going to go up to Lake so-and-so, we're going to boat and we're going to swim and we're going to have a good time together. That's the type of activities that he would plan for the family.
Yeah.
So when everybody got together, well, that was the point, to be able to expand and to be able to enjoy one another's company. Well, we finished finally after about an hour and a half conversation talking about what she wanted to have done for his funeral and the type of activities or speakers that she wanted to have for the service itself. Service rolled around, and it became very obvious that everything that he had done, anyone that he may have met in the course of his activities or adventures, either tried to be there or sent something. And so there were a lot of people in attendance, and there were a lot of gear. And I don't know if you know what I mean, but when I say gear, I mean of any sport that you might even consider. You can look at some of these items and say, what is that for?
Right.
But she really enjoyed the fact that a lot of people were actually admiring her husband for who he was and for what he did. I do remember one story in the course of the funeral itself, and I'm just going to paraphrase the story. I don't remember it word for word, but I do remember the message. And the message was, regardless of what you may be doing in life, you have the opportunity to make that choice, to either make it. How did he put it? Should have read this before we started. But the gist is, if you're going to put a lot of time and effort into doing an activity or adventure, enjoy the activity and the adventure, not the time that it took to plan. Do you see what I'm saying? He said, don't just ignore the time that it takes to plan and then focus and immerse yourself in the adventure. So, and I thought about that for a long time. And I remembered thinking that sometimes I plan activities and the activity is done and over like that. But then you just go back and say, God, man, it took me a long time to plan that thing. I mean, I like to do treasure hunts. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And where it takes a long time to plan out treasure hunts and have people do the treasure hunts, and whether they like it or not, at least you participated. You got the treasure hunt done. But if they don't finish the treasure hunt, then you go back and you think, I made it too big, I made it too long, whatever the case might be. But you go back and you ignore the activity, and then focus more on what it took to get you to the activity, not through it.
Right.
And so that was his message. And that seemed to be the crowning jewel of most of the activity or discussions or talks that were actually said in the course of this funeral. Well, as we left the funeral, there was one thing that they asked us to specifically do, which I still can't believe we did. And so this just so coffiners know that this is one of those things that sometimes people ask specific requests, and you can't always do it, but you try to do your best in making sure that you can do what you can do.
Yeah.
Well, what she wanted to do is his last activity before he got very sick. He died of cancer, by the way. But the last activity he did before he really got sick was drag racing. And this is the type of racing where he's actually in the elongated car with the big wheels in the back. I don't know what they call them, dragsters. But he took off, and the front end was up for about a quarter of a mile, she said. I don't think it was that long because that would eventually drop. But the front end was up in the air, and she just remembered him letting go of holding onto the steering wheel and then trying to wave.
Oh my gosh.
to her as he was cruising down this strip of road.
Yeah.
When the front went down, and all of a sudden the chute pulled in the back, where the chute pops out and slows the car down.
Oh wow. It was that intense that.
Yeah, and that was the type of dragster he had done. So her request was, can you put a chute on the back of the hearse?
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I said, well, I guess we could, but don't you have to be going a certain speed in order to get that chute to open?
Right.
And she goes, I have friends on the police force. I would love to be able to say or ask them if they could give us an escort.
Oh my gosh.
And she said, and we'll keep because usually when we do a funeral procession, the escort is usually 15 to 20 miles an hour. Yeah. And she said, I don't care if we go, and I don't care if you lose the procession, but it's important for us as a family to have that bellowing chute on the back of the car. And so I said, okay. And I didn't think it would happen, but she called me back and she said, yes, they're going to do it for us. And I thought, what? Oh,
She's
no.
She's got to have a lot of friends on the police force.
I just thought, oh no, what are we going to do now? So anyway, we got the casket after the service into the funeral coach, and then the drag racing company had like carbingers or something like that they actually attached to the back of the car. Didn't harm the car, but they attached the chute to the back of the car and they let it drag. So when we reached the speed limit of 45 miles an hour, there was this chute in the back of the car, and you could feel it while you're driving the car because the car would shake back and forth. But we eventually, and the car, oh my gosh, had to be 20 cops in cars that were running alongside, and they were booking at about 55 miles an hour. And the cemetery was probably maybe 12, 13 miles away from where we had the funeral services. Yeah. So imagine, if you will, usually when you're in a procession, and I think we've talked about this before, but you're going so slow that the cop cars or the escort service is running past you twice your speed. So if I'm going 20, easily. He's probably passing me at 40, so he can get to the next intersection to close it off so that we have straight away, so we aren't stopped by a light, turning cars, nothing like that. Well, imagine, if you will, for the entire 12-mile stretch, every single one of those intersections as we approached at 45 miles an hour had already been closed.
Oh,
so
really?
we were cruising at 45 miles an hour with this huge.
Can you imagine being waited at a light and just watching a funeral procession and seeing this hearse kind of swaying side to side with a parachute coming out the back.
I don't know if it's a parachute, but I likened it to a parachute because it's, I don't know if coffiners know what the actual name of that chute is on dragster cars. I'd be interested in knowing. But anyway, we're cruising down the road at about 40, 45 miles an hour, and the car is just shifting back and forth. And which I didn't know is that when we got closer to the cemetery, the dragster unit had actually put on what they call a breakaway. I want to call it a breakaway device, but it was a remote controlled detonator, something that would
the chute.
Yeah, that the chute would be released from the car, and then it would just float to the ground. And that, I think, was their symbolism of saying, here was someone that was so full of life, like this chute catching all this air, so full of life, and now he's going to be placed in the ground, which is where the chute ended up.
Yeah.
So we pulled into the cemetery, and it's a very popular cemetery in the area in which I was working. And we pulled into the cemetery, and this cemetery, the only thing I didn't like about the cemetery is you didn't know where you were going. So if no one was at that front gate in a golf cart taking you to the cemetery, you had to sit there and wait until someone showed up, because they're the ones that had the maps and they could take you. They had a specific way in which they wanted to guide you to this gravesite. Well, this cemetery, what's the difference between a cemetery and memorial park, Holly? We've talked about it before. What's the difference?
Yes, we have.
Do you remember?
We have talked about it before.
Holly, that's not the question. Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember talking about it. Isn't the memorial park that's just that it's a park. That's it, right?
It looks like a park. All the headstones are flat.
Oh, all the headstones are flat. That's the difference.
Yes, and so a cemetery will have upright markers. Now, there are cemetery memorial parks, memorial park and cemetery. You've heard that phrase before, right? So there's a combination of upright markers and flat markers. Well, this was a cemetery, and so this particular section of the cemetery we had to walk through, and there was no way of getting around it. We had to walk through upright markers, and we had to actually process that casket over three rows of headstones.
Oh my God.
Before we got to his gravesite.
So with the cemetery, is it all upright?
No, not generally. I mean, the older cemeteries, like when you had the states just starting up with cemeteries, most would have upright markers. And so cemeteries today will actually have areas of the cemetery itself where there's only certain sections of the cemetery that will allow upright markers. Yeah. And then the other section of the cemetery or memorial park would have only flat markers. You couldn't do either angle, upright, nothing like that. They had to be flat markers. Oh, so in this particular cemetery, going back to that story, we got as close to the grave as we possibly could. And the cemetery crew even told us, you have to be careful. And the pallbearers have to be strong enough that they can go ahead and lift this casket over the tops of some of these upright markers. We're going to guide you through the smaller section but you still have to lift the casket over, because you've seen upright markers and they're all different shapes and sizes. Yeah. So we went on ahead, pulled up the coach, waited for a few minutes for them to gather up the chute, which would then allow other cars to come into the cemetery. And so we were sitting there waiting, and I'm looking at the path that they had outlined for us to get there. And I'm identifying 3 separate headstones that we needed to lift this casket over before we could get to the gravesite where he was going to be.
Right.
And so once everyone arrived, I asked the pallbearers to come to the back of the car, and they did. And then I said, now listen, this is what is going to happen. We have to carry this casket over 3 different headstones. And if you don't feel like you can do it, please step aside. We're going to have someone else come in and take hold of the casket so that there's no
Yeah,
There's
you
no
can't drop
mishaps.
this.
Yeah, there's no mishaps. And so all of them that had actually started as pallbearers at church said they could go ahead and handle it. Took them at their word. Okay. So 6 of them, 3 on each side, pulled this casket out of the funeral coach and then angled themselves in the direction of the open graveside. Now, everything was fine. We were just walking along fine, and we'd gotten to the first headstone. And it was probably the middle of the 2 or of the 3. So there was still one smaller than this one and one larger than this one. So that they still had to go over. So the first one, they didn't, no hesitation at all. They just lifted that thing and just went right over the top of that marker. And I just thought, oh, this is working out well.
Good.
It's going to be fine. Yeah, that's good. So then about 4 paces further, we got to the second marker, which was it was the smaller one.
Oh, okay.
And one of them looked at me and just said, "Hey, Frank." And I looked back and he goes, "Can we rest a minute?" And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, where are we going to rest?
Seriously. On top of the headstone. Did they really set it down there?
Yes, they set it on top of the headstone, and they were thinking, well, let's go ahead and just give us a rest. We'll keep an eye on the casket. We won't let it teeter. We won't let it fall.
No.
So they put the casket on the second headstone, and I thought, oh man, if the cemetery crew saw what we were doing, they'd probably kick us out of the cemetery because you don't want that possibility of breaking a headstone. So I said, yes, we can do it for maybe 5 to 7 seconds, and then we got to go.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. They set the casket on there. Hands were still attached to the casket, so they wasn't going anywhere, but they were taking their breath, their little bit of a break. So then we got to the tallest. So finally, I said, we got to go. We got to keep moving. And so, again, probably to shoulder length. And I'm 6'1", but if I had to lift the casket up to my shoulder, that's a tough lift. Yeah. And even with 6 people, they lifted it up there. And the good thing for us is that the reason we went over to this marker is because it had a flat top. It wasn't angled like a church steeple or something like that you would see occasionally. So they went on ahead and they rested the casket as they were trying to get maneuvered around the marker.
Right.
They set the casket on the marker.
Oh no.
Now, I just want to know what your thoughts are right now, Holly. Where do you think I'm going?
Right now, in my head, I'm seeing the casket resting on top of a headstone.
Yeah.
And 6 people around it, like probably talking like, okay, here's what we've got to do. And the casket is slowly tilting forward. And it's just going to fall. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh my gosh. You are partially right.
Oh, great.
So yeah, they weren't necessarily discussing what was going to happen. They were actually making movement around the marker, leaving the casket resting on the marker itself, and then getting them and positioning themselves to where they could take a hold of the casket. Once again, the 2 in front, moving forward just a little bit. Now remember, we're about 4 or 5 paces from the open grave. And
it's
so
close.
they're close. And I'm thinking, we've done so well, let's just keep going. So one of the guys in the back said something which caused one of the guys in the front to turn around and look at him and actually yell something to him. But in the process of him yelling something, he let go of the casket, and the casket started to tip towards the open grave site. And I yelled, God. "Hey, watch what!" Yeah, exactly. I yelled, "Hey, watch what you're doing!" So in the interim, he not ran over, but turned around and really quick reflexes grabbed the casket and pulled it up to shoulder height again. But in the interim of him doing so, something happened.
Great.
Do you know what it was?
Who fell in the grave?
No one fell in the grave. And it was close to the casket. The casket almost fell in the grave.
The casket was closed, so it didn't open.
Nope.
I don't know what happened.
And so as he grabbed a hold of the casket, I hear a... And okay, the reaction to the rest of the pallbearers was the exact same one you just did. And Holly, let me ask you something. When you're lifting something and you start laughing, how much strength do you have?
Oh, not a lot. Not a lot.
Okay, Holly. Now you've got to listen to this next little part. They're starting to laugh. Everyone's
Next
starting to
little
laugh.
part or next little fart?
Oh, did I say part? I meant fart. Because not only did he do it,
Oh,
but the guy
no.
next to him got, and it just started to rotate through all the pallbearers, and they
It's
couldn't
a
hold on to.
domino effect. I can't hold it back. It's coming right through me.
So everyone that was sitting at the gravesite waiting to have the casket moved to the grave, the man started to run to the casket because they felt like they could go ahead and help these guys that were losing their strength now, right? Because everyone's tooting, everyone's farting. And so they're having a hard time holding up with their strength. And so one of the pallbearers that were actually holding the casket at the time, I don't know how it happened, but he had an untied shoe.
What?
And one of the shoes were untied. And so he tripped. He was tripping in front of the guy, to the guy in front of him. And everyone thought it was a staged act because the guy that they were taking to the grave was so adventurous that this was part of the pallbearers' last hurrah for the guy that was in the casket.
Oh,
right?
my gosh. Yeah, we're going to do a flip and throw the casket in the grave.
So here's what I want you to think about and imagine this for just a moment. The lowering device has two big balls. Well, they look kind of like balls, but they're not really balls, but they're designed to be part of the lowering device so that when you get the casket to that end of the lowering device, you can set the casket on one of the rollers and then just gradually move it across the lowering device so that it can go ahead and be placed on some cloth straps that can then be lowered into the ground, allowing the casket uninhibited, unburdened, unbothered,
Oh, no.
lowered into the casket, into the ground. Well, as these guys were tripping into one another and farting up their face, this guy took it upon himself to actually stand on these two balls. And
my gosh, no.
And he grabbed the casket and then he, without looking, stepped back. Now, when you step back and you're holding onto the casket, you're going to fall into a hole.
Yeah, what was the plan?
Fall into a hole. And so what happened is when he stepped back, one of the pallbearers saw what he was about to do and fall into the hole. And he let go of the casket and he ripped the guy off the gravesite. And so the two of them fell to the side.
Okay.
Now the casket.
Where's the caskets going?
It's free fall. And but the casket landed on the lowering straps. And so it didn't go into the hole.
Okay.
But now, if you were to look at it and you could say, okay, the casket when it's sitting on the grave site is actually parallel to the top of the grave. This was not, because it was still on the back end of the lower. And if someone didn't grab it and the pallbearers didn't hurry and act, they would have let that casket fall into the grave. But they were able to readjust themselves and get the casket onto the grave. Now, all of this happened in front of the wife. And his children.
Yeah,
and they were all sitting there, and they were all trying to be just as somber as could be. And she just broke into laughter.
Really?
I mean, a hysterical laughter.
My gosh.
And if I could mimic it, would sound some that type of a laugh.
So she lost it.
And then the rest of the family started to laugh.
Right.
And the laughter became so much as part of that service that they didn't even try to have a committal service. There was no prayer said, nothing. They just continued laughing, waved the cemetery crew over so that they could lower the casket while everyone was laughing. The vault lid went down, and she stood and she said, "I think my husband would have loved this service."
Oh.
And then she said, as a parting comment, "What a gas."
What a gas. So she had a good sense of humor about it.
And then everyone started laughing again. So I'm telling you, boy, there are some things you can do on services. But boy, when you get to the gravesite, and oh my gosh, all it took was that one and I started laughing and I tried to hide it. As soon as I heard the fart, I thought to myself, did anyone else hear that?
Did anyone else? Should I be laughing? Oh my gosh.
Anyway, but it didn't stop with the guy who started it. It kind of, sometimes you get stomach cramps and the next person to you will start getting stomach cramps. So you
You
feel
just
lightheaded and
gotta,
nauseous. All of a
and
sudden it
sure they're
passes on to the next person.
straining because they're lifting up this body, having to lift it over.
And you know what? And
stones.
when I think back on it, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Maybe they were holding in gas, and all of a sudden, because they had to go the strain, all of a sudden, well, something's got to give.
That's why they needed a break. Got to compose themselves.
So anyway, I talked to the lady about 2 weeks later, and she said, "Frank, did you enjoy the service?" And I said, I truly did enjoy the service. And I said, I thought it was full circle about how he hurt his leg trying to get to a position where he could propose to you. You kind of let his leg bleed out. you still
admired the ring.
Yeah, I still admired the ring. I'll get to you in a moment. And then went on ahead and had great activities and adventures throughout your marriage. And then to have that as a final, and doesn't happen, not too often, but to have that as a final adventure for him as he approached his own graveside, I think was very apropos for his life.
And I think too, just his whole mantra of like enjoying the activity.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not a whole lot that you can enjoy about a graveside service.
Yeah.
But
agreed.
That he definitely taught that lesson to his wife, because she wasn't going to try and hide the laughter. She's like, I'm just going to enjoy this for what it is.
I think it's funny that she kept herself composed until everything was finally on the grave, and where she could actually go ahead and watch the lowering of the casket take place, and then let out that cackle.
Yeah.
And I think that it set the pallbearers at ease and at rest.
Right.
Letting them know that, hey, you know what? He has passed away, and what was happening to him right now, he would probably be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, do it again. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. What a ride. Oh my gosh.
What a ride. That's funny. Mm-hmm.
Wanted to skydive one more time. He did kind of go into free fall for a little bit there.
Oh my word. So anyway, that's
funny.
Yeah, that's today's story. It's kind of a more lighthearted from previous episodes, but I just think that you need to know, coffiners, that there is so many things that take place within a funeral and the services that you don't always know or even hear about, that are truly comical and that are truly almost mind-boggling in the fact that it happens.
Right.
And so even though you think you can handle it, and sometimes just there are some little snaps that just take place, or little snafus that take place that just, you can't do anything but laugh.
I know. And sometimes that's the best thing to do.
That's exactly right.
Is to find humor in the situation.
That's
and
right.
Say, okay, at least we're laughing.
That's the way I look at it. So anyway, that's today's story. And I hope that you'll find some humor in it and recognize the main thing that I hope that you'll see is not only that you can do whatever you want, but don't be afraid to ask about specific things on a funeral or an activity that the loved one liked to do. Is there any way we could?
Right.
Oh yeah. All it takes is an ask. And chances are, if we can, we will. But if we can't, we'll be honest with you in that as well. Because if there are certain things, like this one had to have certain permitting from the city. In order for it to happen, because once that chute was let go, and plus, who's going to drive down the road with a chute holding behind a hearse?
I know.
Seriously,
exactly.
People would look at it, and that could cause accidents as they're looking at it. So there is a way of making sure that those permits are appropriately filed. So anyway, any questions or comments on that one, Holly?
No, I think that's hilarious. No, you go ahead.
I was telling the story at dinner. And,
you were?
Oh, yeah. And the people at the table, they just started laughing. They just couldn't believe.
Laughing.
Yeah, they couldn't believe that had actually happened. I said, "Oh my gosh, we got more."
There's more. Wait. Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
So
what a fitting end, you know. No, I think that's amazing. I love his whole mantra of enjoying the activities and not worrying about them beforehand, and not almost dreading. And life.
I mean, he didn't really let challenges stop him. He actually focused on the challenge and head on.
Yeah.
So, I guess, in my own mind, I just think, oh, why can't I live my life like that? You know what I mean? There's a certain type of person that would actually be willing to, hey, you want to go climb, let's say Everest? Yeah, give me 6 months. I'll be ready. Something like that.
Right.
But, I don't know if many people would have that opportunity or the lifestyle to actually be able to do it, but they are there. So.
But I will say also, everyone has the opportunity or lifestyle ability to have fun in their life. And like, no matter what's going on in your life, not taking it too seriously. If it is serious, take it serious. But, if it's just something that life is throwing at you, find humor in it.
Mm-hmm.
Or find the good, and, it's there.
Yep. Focus on the adventure, not the time planning it.
Yes. And I'm positive. I mean, some of the hardest times on my life, I can look back on that now and laugh at.
Mm-hmm.
Or find humor, or even if it's not humor, I can find something good. And multiple times I can find a lot of things that went right because something first went wrong. So just try and keep that perspective as you're going through it, because life is relentless, but you can have fun with it.
I agree.
Make it a little easier on yourself.
Yep. And I can still remember that elderly lady's face and how just calm and gentle she was.
Just watching it happen.
Yeah, and I think she had that same
there
reaction.
Goes my husband.
I think I was going to say, I think she had that same reaction when hey, come with me. We're going to go, whatever. Wheelbarrow chasing or whatever the case is.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, yeah, whatever the activities were. But, yeah, and then to have her top it off with what a gas after what had actually
What a gas.
Anyway, okay.
Well, no, I think that's great. I guess we'll just close it out right there.
Thank you.
Tie up a little bow on it. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Coffiners, if you have any stories like this or questions about any of our stories so far, or questions for Frank, email us at letsbefrank@coffintalkin.com and send us a DM on Instagram at Coffin Talkin. Follow us and subscribe on YouTube at Coffin Talkin Podcast. And we will talk with you next week.
Thanks, Coffiners. Have a great week. Bye.